another thing we wanted to get into. Gio, you brought it up, but I remember seeing it while I was at work, and then I just couldn't look it up because we had so many other things to look up, and then Ted Cruz was fucking up hard. Perseverance, a
That's right.
rover. Gio, is that correct? A rover
Hmm.
landed on Mars. This I'm just gonna toss it over to you. Like, just take
Yeah,
over.
yeah. So let me give you the details. The Perseverance Rover is the size of a SUV, and it was landed on Mars this week. It had been on its way for about 8 months now, so it was launched in the summer of last year. It is probably the most advanced piece of equipment ever put on another planet. Its mission is to seek out ancient life on Mars, whether Mars ever held life in its past, by sampling the rock and the soil that's that it can get to, and it is in preparation for returning a sample back to Earth. So there's going to be another mission sent in a couple of years to go to the location of the rover, pick up the samples, and return them back to the Earth, and that's the plan. It's also going to be experimenting with a helicopter. So it
Hmm.
has like a little drone on board that's going to be testing, and so because the atmosphere is thinner on Mars and the temperatures are different, we're going to be looking at, NASA is going to be looking at how these systems operate in that kind of environment, right? And whether they could start sending drones out to explore more parts of Mars, right? And there was another rover sent to Mars in 2012, which had almost the exact same like makeup, the same kind of hardware, called Curiosity, and it's still operating. It's still going and exploring Mars and going and digging up things, analyzing the dirt, and doing all kinds of science. So
Word.
so uh, we think, like, as scientists, and engineers and people who want to explore space, we think it's really what we're trying to do is we're trying to learn about ourselves. A big thing, right, is to learn about ourselves, is to understand where we came from, where we are in the universe, and where we're going to go, right? And we one of the common questions that's brought up is, like, how can we be going to other planets or exploring other planets when we have so many problems here on Earth? Well, it doesn't have to be one thing or the other. We could be doing awesome social programs while also doing awesome space programs. NASA picks up about 0.5% of the entire U.S. budget, and with that, they're able to do all the robotic missions that they've done, and all the manned missions, and maintain the International Space Station, and do all kinds of deep space science, uh, with 0.5% of the budget of the U.S. While on the other hand, the military takes up 60% of the budget of the U.S.
You said
So that
60,
NASA
six zero? Sorry,
60%, yeah, 60,
60%?
yeah. So NASA takes 22 billion a year. The U.S. military takes 738 billion a year, right? So when we talk about, like, how can we maintain a space program and not be feeding or taking care of our people? Well, we're looking at the wrong place to be cutting things from, right? It's not NASA where you want to be cutting things from. NASA also creates good paying American jobs in engineering, in science, and has a peaceful mission, right? There's no none of the missions. By the way, everything NASA does is public, right? Because it's a public agency. You can see all the missions that they're doing, where all the money is being allocated to, unlike the military or like the Pentagon. And we see that all the missions are peaceful, and they give things back, right? Like, there's been a lot of spin-off technologies that have come out of space exploration. For example, satellites, right, that now contribute to GPS systems, right? If it wasn't for our ability to launch satellites, then our GPS systems would not operate. And in addition to many other spin-off technologies. And so the fact that the United States is still engaging in space exploration and pushing the edge of technology in my opinion, is a positive thing, and should be put we should put more of a budget into that.
Nice, nice, nice.
Hector.
Yeah, Gio, you said that the part of the mission is to search for life on Mars at one point, right?
Yeah,
Obviously,
evidence for life. Yeah.
evidence of life, and we're talking about like single cell organisms, right? We're not talking about like Jabba the Hutt just chilling right there and be like, "Hey, what's up, guys? You found me." Um, yeah. So because they're looking, I think I read that they some believe that those craters are not. They're actually like craters of like water, like bodies of water that used to be holding, life, right? And later, whatever happened, and there should be some sort of like residual left within like the rocks and all that stuff. Is that correct?
Yeah. So yeah, we're most likely to find single celled life. Um, we have good reason to believe that at some point in the last 3 billion years, Mars was covered in water and an ocean that was like hundreds of meters deep. The reason we think this is because we do see evidence of ice at the poles, and also ice buried beneath the ground where we have been able to dig down. We also see that some of the rocks look very similar to the way pebbles look like in streams here on Earth. You know how like when you go to a stream, you see little pebbles that have been rounded out, right? They've been rounded out by years and years of water like crossing over them, right? And so we see those same formations in like valleys on Mars, but they're dried out, right? And so there's a lot of evidence to indicate that there was water there at some point, and because of that, whenever there's water and if there's the right temperature and the right ingredients, which Mars and Earth share a lot of the same ingredients because they're made of the same rock that formed the solar system, then there probably was there could have been life there, if not frozen nowadays, that we might be able to bring back to life.
Now let's assume that let's look to the future, and let's assume that we do find evidence of life on Mars. What will be the next step? What will be what will we look forward to? What would NASA look forward to, and what exactly, like, do they have a plan already set up, like, to take the next step?
Yeah. So if we were to find life on Mars, we would first have to find or evidence of life, right? Maybe that'd be fossils or something that's frozen that might still be alive. You would first have to verify that it's not actually Earth life, because for the past like billions of years, Earth and Mars and all the planets of the solar system have been exchanging material, right? Because every time there's an asteroid impact, you launch a bunch of material into space, and it goes flying everywhere. And then once in a while, those rocks end up on another planet. So the entire solar system has just been exchanging material for billions of years. And so we have to verify that it's actually an independent source of life that emerged separately and parallel to Earth's life. And if we do find that, then we have evidence of two sources of life within the solar system that emerge independently. That gives us reason to believe that life is actually really common throughout the universe, right? Throughout the galaxy, and the prospects of life and intelligent life being around somewhere in the galaxy is much higher, and so it just creates a lot of excitement. As far as like a plan for maintaining, we're gonna so the sample that's been gathered that's gonna be gathered by Perseverance is gonna be returned to Earth to be studied for evidence of that, because we've never done that before. And that, so people raise the alarm, is like, wait, is there concern for contamination, right? Like, are there going to be viruses on board that are going to come and like wipe out the human race? Well, that's very unlikely, because like I said, we've already been exchanging material for billions of years, right? It's not like we've been isolated, but because of asteroid impacts, we've been sharing material. And also, whenever you have like a pathogen, the pathogen usually kills you or infects you because it has the correct receptors that interact right with your cells. And that's how, like, for example, the coronavirus has evolved to interconnect with human cells, and that's why it infects us and not other like creatures. So the pathogen has to co-evolve with the host. You can't just have an alien life form come in and try to like intersect with like Earth life form and have some sort of infection. So I think the concerns for isolation are not as high as a lot of people would think.
Damn. Dude, imagine that rock is carrying like the X gene, and it turns some of us into like mutants.
That would be cool.
What powers would you have? What powers would you want to have?
Oh, you're asking my favorite superhero, probably Dr. Manhattan.
So you want
power to control the universe.
Damn, forget us, huh?
So Gio,
Yeah.
you said something real quick. You said that it's actually bringing samples back for us to study. So those would actually be the first ever pieces of Mars that we would have.
That we've brought back. Like I said, we've had Martian meteorites land on Earth that we've discovered.
Got it.
Right, so uh, it wouldn't be the first sample from Mars that has ever come, but it would be the first like fresh sample that hasn't gone through space and hasn't been exposed to the elements. So yeah.
Oh, okay, got it.
Sick.
Um,
Damn. Okay. What about
is
what about
Mars is
the-
Mars real? Just for like the the fake snowers, we gotta. Is Mars real?
Yeah,
It-
it is real. You can actually
it's-
see it in the sky.
Is
You
it
know,
Well, we
flat?
won't know until we get those samples back. Until
flat?
then, it's all CGI.
Well, even then, like, where do those samples come from? They just were fabricated in a lab somewhere, right? So,
Well, where did they make The Martian, the movie?
But is it flat?
Right, that was Mars, right?
no, only the Earth is flat, not the other planets.
Oh yeah, all the other planets are round. Ours is flat.
Oh, the round. What about? Okay, so what about the? What about the sun? What kind of role does the sun play with? Does the sun have when it comes to life on other planets? Because the further you get away from the sun, the colder it gets. Correct.
Mhm.
How much of a factor do you think that will be when it comes to if we did find any samples of life, and what would it tell us about that type of life?
Yeah, so you're right. The farther away you are from the sun, we learned this in grade school, the colder it is. Right,
And
and
that
Mars is.
it's always expanding, so it's always getting further and further away.
By the way, people at
Yeah,
home,
yeah.
you could Google this stuff too. The stuff you learn in school.
Yeah,
Yeah, we don't know
Just-
shit.
You can learn all this. It's called the internet. Just search it. You have a question?
yeah,
Ask
it's
Google,
all available.
right? All
it's-
available, man. None of this is, it's private stuff. None of this is, for
Yeah.
scholars
Well,
only.
to get to Alan's question, how do we know that Mars is real? Right, like I said, you can find it in the sky. Like you can see it moving.
yeah.
It's a little red like dot, and
Right.
if you have a really good telephoto lens, you can point at it and you can see like you can start to make out features of it. Right, so you don't have to take
Yeah.
NASA's word for it or any government agency or our word for it. Right, you can start to figure things out yourself.
Yeah, it's
It's
Yeah,
still
a few-
sketchy.
a month ago, yeah, it was up there next to the moon. It was a little red dot, and there's actually an app or several apps that you could use and point it at the sky, and it maps out literally everything that's in the sky. So you don't have to guess. You don't have to guess. Oh, what is that? Well, that's the moon, idiot. No, next to that, next to that is a little red dot. I don't know if it's still, well, like you said, it probably still is there. Still is there. Yeah. So download the app. I forgot what the name of it, but yeah, several apps that you could use.
I have one called Starwalk.
Star Walk. That might be. That
Yep,
might be the
Starwalk
one I
2.
got.
Yeah, it's a free app.
Star-
Yeah,
Two.
Starwalk 2. Yep.
Yeah.
Damn, imagine people that have one.
So yeah, I'm gonna bring it back to Gio's question because I'm a good moderator, even though I'm faded. So yeah, the effects that the lack of sun on further planets would have on life, right? Like what were those?
Yeah, so it gets colder, and Mars is farther away from the Earth, so it is colder there. But another way to control temperature is with pressure, right? So if you have a thicker atmosphere, then you will have you have the potential for higher temperatures. Just like on Venus, you have a really thick atmosphere made out of CO2, and you have what's called a runaway greenhouse effect that has risen the temperature up to 900 degrees Fahrenheit on the surface, which people are afraid that if we don't get our shit together could happen here on Earth. So if you have a thick atmosphere and you have layers and layers of atmosphere, then you can have a higher temperature and you could have liquid water, right? Which is the point of why we talk about temperature when it comes to life, is so that we can have liquid water, which plays a role in the creation of life. And we do think that at some point Mars did have a thicker atmosphere, which is why we think that it had liquid water. And but over time the atmosphere got eroded and got taken away by solar winds, right, radiation from the sun, and just ripped away the atmosphere over billions of years. And so now it has a really thin atmosphere, so it's really cold. All the water has frozen or evaporated, but we could still find fossilized evidence of life.
Mm-hmm. Sick.
Awesome. We, yeah, we had the conversation about that. So let's see. Yeah, I think we got it.
And
Cool.
yeah, I'm also thinking like obviously, the goal is to, send people up there, right? That's the goal,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
right? And then what? Like what? Collect more samples, you
Well,
know.
depends on who you ask, right? Because if you ask Elon Musk, he talks about the mission of SpaceX is to make humans a multiplanetary species. And the reason he thinks is because if we have all of humans on one planet, or basically putting all your eggs in one basket, and something happens to that basket, then you have no more humans. And so diversifying your real estate is part of the idea of moving people around to other planets, moving people to the moon, to Mars, and making sure that like when the sun goes, because it will go eventually, or the Earth goes, that humans, if we want to, are still going to be around to do human things.
So would it be? Do you think it's a smart idea because if we move enough people, it could possibly like heal planet Earth from climate change?
Um, that's one way to look at it. Although I don't think that's going to. You would need to move a lot of people,
Right.
and if we
A
look at history
significant
and
amount.
why, yeah, if you look at history and why people have like left their home land, is usually because of turmoil or climate instability, political instability, right? The reason people left Europe, right? There's a lot of instability at that time. They moved to North America. So you could imagine like people immigrating to Mars in the future when the situation on Earth gets really bad, and when you're going to have a significant amount of people moving. Um, but if you just look at history, that's usually the reason why you have like a shit ton of people moving.
Hey, so Mike, like just thinking about this, like taking a bunch of people and moving them out of Earth, like don't you have to be like in fairly good shape to like just survive like getting out of the atmosphere? I mean, imagine like who are we gonna take? Like we're gonna take like 70-year-olds, 80-year-olds up there and think that they're gonna, you know, pull through,
Yeah,
right?
that's
Like
a good question because like astronauts go through those fucking
yeah,
trials
there's
where
like psychological tests and all that.
yeah
Make sure you're not gonna like pull a bunch of plugs and sabotage the whole thing, right? Um,
maybe they would put you in like a ship where you're just like asleep the whole way through.
You could do that. I think we're a long ways away from getting that working. But in the near future, in like the next, like, I don't know, 40, 30 years, you're not going to have that many people moving. You're probably going to have, depending on how successful SpaceX is, they're talking about moving hundreds of people at a time in large spaceships, like ships like we've never seen before, like the sizes of like of stadiums, right? And if you can have that, then and you have a large space to move around, then maybe the psychological aspect of it is not. But there's also like really, he's talking about crazy things. He's talking about like $500,000 ticket to get to Mars. That's like your life savings, right? That's like a home. So I think
how
the
much?
kind of
Five hundred
five
thousand?
For
five
some
hundred
people,
thousand.
but for the rich people, that ain't shit.
Oh, for the rich boy, it is, yeah. But for the average person, it's a lot of money, right? So I think the idea is that people would move there permanently,
But then,
sell their
like,
home,
are
and
there
just go.
just fucking places to live out there, or is this like, oh, welcome to Mars? Now you got to get a fucking job. Like, so now is this the same fucking runaround that we have here on Earth?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. What kind of government and what kind of economics are going to be like created in a fresh environment, right? You could have the potential for experiments and new types of government, right? Especially where you're out of the reach of any like corporation or government. Depending on how SpaceX goes around it, if you have independent missions, right, that are being privately financed by individuals, they can create their own like way of handling things, right?
Yeah.
Or you could have like the indentured servitude model that we had in when we were colonizing North America, where you had people
Yeah.
would
That was
basically work
horrible.
their lives. Yeah, that was pretty bad, right? They would work
Mhm.
to they would get a permanent job where they would just work to sustain themselves, right?
It was
To
basically,
well,
white people enslaving white people.
yeah, yeah. But then again, like,
White-
isn't that
white
kind of
poor-
what we have
white-
right now?
Yeah,
Yeah.
white poor people. I'm sorry, white poor people are
Yeah.
just taking advantage of people that just need the jobs. Anyway, so okay, right now it sounds like a band-aid solution, right? Because we're just taking our problems that we have here and going over there and then continuing, like Alan was saying, like how is it going to work? But like you said, we're a long ways away from that, but I think we should, work
It's
out
not-
now, right?
Yeah, and it's not going to solve problems, right? We're going to continue to have like all kinds. We're going to continue to have climate change problems, overpopulation. No matter like if we just move more people would just populate more people. Like it's not meant to solve the problems we have right now. What we're trying to solve is the problem of diversification of where we're living, right, and becoming more versatile in the way we live, as opposed to just living on one planet.
Hey guys, don't forget to like and subscribe if you like what you hear. And if you want to hear some of the issues that you care about discussed on Discussion Lounge, go ahead and drop them in the comment section.